what specifically is MS? Like what multiple sclerosis? What is that and how does it affect a person's body?
So, MS is an unpredictable autoimmune disease that affects the central nervous system. The exact cause of MS is still unknown, but we do know that something triggers the immune system to attack the central nervous system, damaging the myelin. And the myelin is your protective coating over the nerves in your body.
Welcome back, welcome back, welcome back to Mind Your Body and Soul, the healthiest podcast you have ever heard in your entire life. I am Joseph Ward, and as always, joined by Mr. Matthias Sweet. Remember, Mind Your Body and Soul is an educational podcast that focuses on all things health related to help our listeners learn more about various topics of health and information they may not have access to. We seek to inform, empower, uplift, and mobilize our listeners to becoming the healthiest versions of themselves. And remember, you can listen to us right here on YouTube. Subscribe to this YouTube channel. Also, remember we're on Anchor Breaker, Radio Republic, Pocket Cast, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and you can also check our websites at www.nmcpodcast.com as well as neighborhoodmedicalcenter.org. All right, so this is the beginning of MS Awareness Month, and thank you to our lovely and our great provider, Miss Elena Steeple. She has connected us with Miss Heidi Katz, who is with the MS Society, and we're going to learn a lot about multiple sclerosis. I know that's a topic that within our communities we don't normally engage in a lot. That's not that. It seems like MS is usually not at the top of the list unless you know somebody who has MS or you've encountered people in the past. But we want to make sure we bring it to the forefront of all of our health topics because we don't think one health issue is greater than the next. So we want to make sure that we have as much information and the resources that we need. So introducing Miss Heidi Katz. How you doing?
I'm doing great, Joseph. How are you?
I am doing great. So we like to kick it off like this. Matthias, you
Yeah,
got the first question?
you already know. Okay,
Yes, let's
so
do
can you
this.
give us a little background information about yourself and why you think more people need to learn about multiple sclerosis?
Absolutely. So I started my career here at the National MS Society a little over 4 years ago. My background is in corporate healthcare and nonprofit development. And when this job description came in front of me, I knew that it was just truly a perfect fit in every way. At the time, I really didn't know that I had any direct connections with MS. But it was very interesting because when, of course, you go out on LinkedIn and Facebook and you put your shiny new position up there, and I was absolutely blown away by how many people I knew who either lived with MS or had a direct connection through a loved one or friend with MS, which really validated my decision to take this position. And awareness is just so important. It is important for people to learn about MS because the more people who know about MS and take action to raise awareness and encourage research, the more progress we can make and the faster we can move towards that cure.
Yes,
There you go.
yes,
There you
yes.
go.
Okay, so what specifically is MS? Like what multiple sclerosis? What is that and how does it affect a person's body?
So MS is an unpredictable autoimmune disease that affects the central nervous system. The exact cause of MS is still unknown, but we do know that something triggers the immune system to attack the central nervous system, damaging the myelin. And the myelin is your protective coating over the nerves in your body. Think about it
Right.
like an electrical cord, right? You have sort of that rubber insulating piece.
Mm-hmm.
You cut into that rubber piece, you expose the fibers, the wires underneath, which can really wreak havoc with that flow of electricity. Well, the same thing happens with MS. The body attacks the myelin and breaks it down, exposing the nerves in our body. And the result is a disconnect between the brain and the body and the brain.
Okay, and so that's more so cognitive functions or motor functions or both.
So both. It's said that if you see one case of MS, you've seen one case of MS. It really affects different people differently, and it's very unpredictable in that way. But some of the common symptoms we hear a lot when people have onset of MS, when they realize that something's wrong, they'll experience something called optic neuritis, which is sort of a sudden loss of vision, which, needless to say, is very scary. It's obviously going to prompt, a quick trip to the ER, and the diagnosis process begins. But that's not the only way that people can notice that they may be having some changes in their body. So some of the symptoms of MS are numbness and tingling, particularly in the extremities, mood changes, memory problems, odd pain, fatigue. We talked about potential the blindness, the optic neuritis, and sometimes as severe as paralysis. Everyone's experience with MS is different, and the losses may be temporary or may be long-lasting, really depending on a lot of different factors. But we've come a long way with diagnosis and treatment.
Well, you took the question right out of my mouth of what I was going to ask. But are there, so like, is it just MS, or are there like different types of MS, or is there one milder than the other? Can you explain the difference if there's different types of MS?
Absolutely. So there are sort of a handful of types of MS, but I think it's best if I just break it down into 3 different types of MS that are the most prevalent and probably the easiest to understand. And it's really important to note that regardless of the type of MS somebody is diagnosed with, the symptoms will still differ from person to person. Okay. So the first type of MS I'll bring to light is called relapsing remitting MS. And it is the form of MS that's most likely to be diagnosed. I think 85% of patients who get diagnosed with MS are diagnosed initially with relapsing remitting MS. And it's defined by attacks, or called relapses, or active disease symptoms, followed by periods of no disease activity, which is called remission. So you have active disease, and then you can go into remission where you just have no symptoms. The MS is still in the body, it's still there, but it's in a controlled form. And as I said, about 85% of people initially diagnosed have this type of MS. So it is the most common. The next is secondary progressive MS, and it often follows the relapsing remittent course of MS. And what happens is neurological function worsens, and the exacerbation of MS becomes a lot more frequent. And then somebody has generally gone from that first state of relapsing remitting into the secondary progressive MS. And it's considered secondary because it will follow first the diagnosis of relapsing remitting.
Gotcha.
The third type, which is really packs the most punch, so to speak, is primary progressive MS. And with primary progressive MS, neurological function worsens, or disability happens from the onset of symptoms. And there's never that early onset of relapsing remitting. So it's a much more intense, much more, I guess I could say, powerful form of MS, where somebody who has this will have more of a permanent disability situation and won't rebound through that remission.
Gotcha. So 2 questions popped in my head, but I want the first one kind of go back, because you talked about the myelin, and just trying to get a better understanding. So, because I think I had a flashback to biology class when you said that. So the myelin, I think they classify it as like the myelin sheath, because it's the protective covering.
Correct.
Okay. All right. Gotcha. So it makes me think about when the sheath of the sword, and if it's taken off, then that exposes the actual and it exposes the myelin, correct?
So if the myelin is stripped, it actually exposes the nerve. And the nerve is what conducts the information from brain to body. So when it's exposed and there's an interruption in that connection, and that's what's causing the multitude of symptoms and the disease.
Gotcha. So is there a specific, or is there an average age range of somebody noticing the symptoms of MS, or can it be at different periods of a person's life?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, one thing we know is that MS does not discriminate and is diagnosed in people of all different backgrounds and ages, but we do have some statistics. Most people who have an initial diagnosis will be between the ages of 20 and 50, although it certainly does show up in young children and in older adults.
Right. And it's amazing that they are still trying to figure out what causes it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, okay. Absolutely.
So I have a question that just popped in my head. So what do you do, or how do you, I'm trying to say the right way to say it, but not really. How do you deal with somebody sometime, I guess, who's going through those things? And, saying as an individual, you get frustrated because they might not remember or do things and those things. Are there ways or different things that people can actually assist or get help with if you're dealing with somebody? Because I know it can be frustrating, especially for caregivers who are trying to care for somebody and you seem like it's getting worse. And
yeah.
so
That's a really, really good question. And I don't think enough people take into consideration how taxing it is on loved ones, friends, caregivers with any type of chronic disease, right? Not just MS. And here at the National MS Society, although we focus very heavily on people who live with MS and we focus on raising that money for the research to cure the disease, as well as raise money to be able to provide support and services for people who live with MS, we also know the importance of making sure that those that are what we call affected by MS, so they don't have the disease, but they're directly affected by someone in their life, that they are able to access resources as well. So I would say for anybody listening who finds themselves in this situation, please go to our website, nationalmssociety.org. There's so much information and guidance for those living with and affected by MS. Also, get familiar with, and it's out on our website, our MS Navigator program. It is one of our greatest resources, and it's made up of highly skilled professionals who can connect people, both living with MS and affected by MS, with information and resources, support, help, find doctors, answer just about any question someone might have. The MS Navigator, you can call in, you can contact online, or you can click on an actual chat function and have instant chat online with an MS Navigator. The hours are Monday through Friday from 9 to 7. The best resource that I can really put forward here is our website. It's easy to navigate, and there's just so much wonderful information out there. Fantastic support.
Yes. You did say that MS doesn't discriminate, and we can see that. But is there a specific population or specific attributes or that could lead a certain population? Let's say maybe Black men at this age or white men at this age, Black men. Are there certain just what attributes can go into it that can affect the specific populations differently?
So, I mean, we do have some statistics. We do know that MS is 3 times more likely to show up in women than in men. That's pretty significant. We also know that MS shows up in all ethnic groups, but it is most common in white women of Northern European descent. Although I will tell you that recent findings have shown that African-American women have a higher prevalence than we originally thought.
Gotcha.
We are focusing very heavily on to try and wrap our arms around what that looks like. There's also some risk factors that people can look out for. They include low vitamin D levels. Certainly smoking and obesity can affect somebody's prevalence towards this. And a recent study through Harvard actually showed that previous exposure to the Epstein-Barr virus, which most people know is the virus that causes mono, also a risk factor. Now, just to clarify, if somebody has had mono or Epstein-Barr, that doesn't mean that they will get MS. But what was found was that in studying people living with MS, a huge percentage of them had at some time had Epstein-Barr or mono. So that is a really big leap forward in trying to understand where this comes from and what causes MS. So that study was extremely important.
Yes. So have you ever had any access or been able to witness or even see some of the research that has gone into learning about MS? Because now I'm just totally intrigued now, especially because not knowing exactly where it comes from or why it affects like that, but knowing the different factors. So have you got a chance to see some of the research surrounding it?
So personally, no, I have not worked with any of the researchers, but I'm very familiar with the research that we're doing. And our research projects, the ones that come to us that we vet through to decide which ones we're going to fund, because the MS Society does fund a majority of the research projects that are out there right now. And we do that through the wonderful donations and support that we get from the communities. But we focus on finding a cure. We focus on reversing the symptoms. So we do want to think about the people who living with MS. And we talked about that primary progressive, people who have more of a permanent disability. How can we reverse that? Myelin repair. How can we repair that myelin, which will help reverse symptoms? And of prevention, right? So, is there going to be a vaccine one day that we can all go out there and take and we won't get MS? So we do focus on those different areas in terms of research, and there are so many research projects happening at all times. So we've got it going from all different aspects, and together collectively, when all that information comes together, it's going to lead to a cure. We changed our mission statement, I want to say a year and a half ago, and our mission statement now says, we will cure MS. That is a really bold statement.
It is.
Very.
Yeah, to put that out there as our mission and really own that, I mean, that's a story right there. And that tells us that we're getting close. We're getting close.
Right. Okay. So because my mind is going. And so this is from the prevention angle.
Yeah.
So you said Eastern European women are affected the most?
Yep. White Eastern European women.
Okay. And so, and you also mentioned health factors. So would a white Eastern European woman who is in top physical, mental shape, they eat correctly, but let's say they've had family members who've had MS, but they have this particular healthy lifestyle. Would that lifestyle help to decrease their chances of developing MS?
And that's a really good question. We have not found a genetic link with MS. So although if you have family members that live with MS, you have a higher prevalence or chance of potentially getting MS, but there is no direct hereditary factor there. We know that avoiding the risk factors that we talked about earlier, watch your vitamin D levels, obviously don't smoke, live a healthy lifestyle. Obesity is one of the risk factors. Those are all really, really important in helping to prevent MS potentially, or at least if somebody is going to get MS, hopefully it'll be less taxing on the body. We do not have a prevention for MS yet. That's what a lot of this research is going towards. And this is what a lot of the fundraising we do is for, to prevent this disease altogether. So we don't have to worry about the cure. We don't have to worry about reversing the effects of the disease, just making sure it no longer exists, eradicating it.
Right. But that moving toward being able to protect that myelin, that'll be big.
Very big. Very big. And it's good to also note, when we find a cure to MS, those results are going to also kind of spill over into other autoimmune diseases. So a cure for MS will also move forward progress for people who are living with the many other debilitating autoimmune diseases that are out there. So it will be a really, really big, big deal.
Gotcha. Yeah. It's very intriguing.
It is, because my mind's twirling. Like, is there a way that, like, not to prevent it, but like, how do we see if like a young child is coming up with that? Like the common signs and symptoms, this are not in everybody. And so it's like, you think of fast, like with the stroke, and you see these signs is happening. But for somebody who just might think, oh, my child might be losing vision, or, you know what I'm saying? It's just, oh, okay, well, that's just genetic. I wear glasses and my glasses are thick. So, my child gonna have the same thing. It's just, those are things like, is MS like commonly misdiagnosed because people are trying to treat the common symptoms?
Less and less now. There was a time, and I've heard so many stories with the people that I've met who were misdiagnosed with the initial onset of the symptoms. Mm-hmm. And then I've met a lot of people who were incorrectly diagnosed with MS when it was something else. So I'm really happy to say that if you see the right doctor, and that's one of the most important things, the chances of a misdiagnosis are very, very slim. We have exact factors now between MRIs and what's it called? The spinal tap.
Mm-hmm.
Doing a spinal tap where you can come to absolute and conclusive diagnosis.
So I have another question. So with treatment of MS, you see it on the commercial now. I think it's a twice a year shot or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the commercial. So do you see like a better treatment that's going on, or can you explain like what type of treatment will somebody have to go through that's going through MS?
Yeah. All of a sudden, the commercials are popping up, right, for MS medications, right, which, is a wonderful awareness building too, because MS is not really a household word like so many other diseases. Right. So I believe right now there are 25 FDA-approved disease-modifying therapies available to treat MS, which is particularly incredible because the first disease-modifying therapy didn't even come out until 1993, which really was not that long ago. And having this multitude of therapies available, like I said, when you see one case of MS, you see one case of MS. So different people respond different ways to these medications. So the more that we have, the more likely a doctor will be able to find the right one for a particular patient. So with the onset of symptoms, the big thing is to know your body and to really talk to your doctor. If you feel like you may have an onset of symptoms that could be MS, you can go to our website. We have wonderful resources for doctors all over the country who specialize in MS, who we partner with and get that proper diagnosis. And then if you have been diagnosed with MS, it's still very important to find that MS specialist who's going to give you that comprehensive care approach to treating the disease, finding the right medication, making sure that a person is treated as a whole, because we know that MS can really affect different parts of the body.
Yes. So we're in Florida. We're in North Florida. We're in Tallahassee. You're in Jacksonville, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So what is the I guess the typical population of people in the North Florida area who you would see with MS? Is it still white women of Eastern European descent, or is it and I'm asking that because we've had a lot of intermixing here in the South, and especially North Florida. We're a different part of the rest of Florida.
Very true.
So what's the normal population you would see diagnosed with MS in this North Florida area?
So honestly, as I said earlier, MS doesn't discriminate. And we see people from all walks of life living with MS. The statistics that I shared earlier, that's more of a global or national statistic. Here locally in MS, in North Florida, I would imagine we probably follow those statistics to some degree. But we know that we plug in with every community here. The thing with MS and putting statistics around it is doctors are not required by the CDC to report a case of MS. So the only way that we really know what the population looks like is based on people who have come forward and self-declared that they live with MS. So we can only really go off of those connections that we as a society have made. And that's why we are working so hard. We talked about awareness earlier. Part of that awareness is getting people to connect with us, because the bigger and broader picture we have around the MS community, the better we really understand how MS is showing up, where MS is showing up, where do we need to be focusing, what populations are we not reaching strongly enough, and so they're not getting the resources that we have to offer. But MS, like anything else, it's a big melting pot, and nobody is protected from MS. There is not a population that never gets it. We just know, again, it's really based on people who have come out and said they have MS to even be able to say where the statistics lie.
Gotcha.
So yeah, because I'm trying to think like with the prevention side, because I really don't see anything like, do y'all do the walks, or are there like prevention like fairs that talk about different things like that? Because you really never hear anything about MS. Like you hear like the cancer runs and the HIV walks and things like that, but you never hear, or do they have those here in Tallahassee and other areas?
We do. So across the country, we have Walk MS events. And actually here in North Florida, we have one in Jacksonville and one in St. Augustine. We also have our bike events, which are also very big fundraisers. And we have a big North Florida PGA Tour, Cycle to the Shore. which goes from Jacksonville down to Daytona. It's a 2-day bike ride. It's a lot of fun. It raises a lot of money, and we have a lot of diehard MS supporters that come out for that. Also in North Florida, in Tallahassee, every year we have our Together for a Cure luncheon. This year it's on September 21st. It will be at the Capitol Country Club, I think it's called, in Tallahassee, and generally that brings together about 200 people. We raise money, we have speakers, we learn, we engage, and it really does pull in a lot of the MS community in Tallahassee. So that's a very important event. We also have more of a gala type event called our Dinner of Champions here in Jacksonville, which is really meant to bring in not just the MS community, but the corporate community to support the work that we do. And then with MS Awareness Week coming up, we are having an event on March 18th at the Gainesville YMCA. They are actually hosting it. It is open to the public. It is strictly for MS awareness. They're going to have activities. They're going to have a walk. They're going to have aerobics. There'll be people such as myself there to answer questions and really just bring the MS community together.
Gotcha. So if somebody is either living with MS or know someone who's living with MS, or just a community member who wants to help, what's the best place, or what are great resources to access for people? Let's say whether they are technologically literate or not. What's the best ways?
So you can always call in. Our phone number is, it's on the website, but if you can access the website, you can narrow it down to where you live. What part of the country do you live in? And see all the activities that are going on in that particular area. And right online, you can join, or there's phone numbers you can call if you're not comfortable joining online, getting involved. So I would say that's really the best resource. And it's just nationalmssociety.org. And it gives you a location. It's a drop down. You pick your location and you'll see everything going on in and around the city that you live in. And that would be my recommendation. And get involved. There's plenty of volunteer opportunities. We're always looking for good volunteers. There's plenty of events like our walk event. We survive on our fundraising, but if you're interested, just come to one of our walk events, show up, meet the community. Our cycling events, also looking for volunteers. And if you are a cyclist, well, it's 150 miles here in North Florida. So if you're up for it, come join us. And there's just so many ways to get involved.
That's good.
Feel free to reach out to me. I'm more than happy to direct anybody, to any resource they may need, or to get them involved anywhere they would like to get involved.
Gotcha. So what keeps you going? This is we all know public health, and you're helping fight the stigma of different illnesses and diseases. It can deal with politics, bureaucracy, all these things.
Yeah.
And because we can see the passion in you. So what keeps you going? What fuels your passion?
So as I said at the beginning, when I first joined this organization, I really didn't know I knew anybody that lived with MS. And it turns out that I did. But more importantly, in the over 4 years that I've been here, I now have a whole community of people that I can call my friends who live with this disease every single day. You mentioned our friend Alana at the beginning, and she's certainly part of that community. And they're just the most amazing people. And they come out and they advocate, and they fight for themselves, and they're empowered. And to be able to walk alongside them and move forward towards the cure. And I always tell them, when we find that cure, my community, I'm getting you together and we're going to dance in the streets. So it's the people and it's the mission. And hearing a mission like we will cure MS is just, it's so fueling, even on the hardest day. And right. I don't live with MS. So if I see all these people who I love and respect fighting every day to find a cure, shame on me if I'm not walking beside them.
Right. Kind of the same like we do, Joe. You know what I'm saying? Same thing.
Yep. But I love it when we are able to connect with others who are in the public health realm, but just in the fight, because they're passionate about helping the people that you come across on a regular basis. So thank you for what you do.
Oh, yes. Well, thank you for what you do. I mean, the impact of just the impact of information alone is tremendous. You know, and yeah, it does fuel our fire, and it's exciting for us here at the MS Society because we've seen so much progress. In the last 5-6 years, we have seen more progress than all the years prior. And this organization's been around now, I think, 76 or 77 years. So things are sort of on fast forward, which is wonderful and exciting.
That's great.
So I got a quick question, Joe. So say you have a family member that does have MS, and your family member's taking care of that person. What are some tips that somebody else that's seeing inside can actually assist that person to help them with? Like, what would be some things that we could do as a community or other people could do to assist that family? Because we know burnout is real with COVID and everything, and it's being more times at home and things like that. So what can somebody looking out do to help support somebody who's going through something like that?
You know, I think as with anybody going through a hard time, just ask what you can do.
Okay.
Ask what they need help with. You know, make sure that if you know about the resources that are out there, that you pass that information on. Don't assume that somebody already knows. And the other thing is you can call in to our navigator. If you have somebody that you know and they really need help with caregiving, or maybe there's a depression issue there. MS is very much connected to depression and other mental wellness things. You know, make that phone call to the National MS Society and find a resource in your community or the community that the person lives in. You know, be an advocate for that person. Dealing with a chronic illness, there's so many moving parts to that, right? And it's so easy to focus on just keeping people physically well, and we do forget about that mental space. And I know you all see it all the time. Mm-hmm. So we focus very heavily on making sure that we have connections to really solid resources in the communities around the country. So be an advocate. Be an advocate.
Yes. Yes. And that's the reason why we have this platform, so we can be an advocate and have our part in the advocacy of different spaces and use our platform to get it out. So and you're the president of the North Florida chapter of the National Multiple Sclerosis Foundation. Or some Multiple Sclerosis Society.
Yes.
Okay. So Oprah Winfrey sees this interview. She said, "I love Heidi." What's the best way that Oprah can get in contact with you?
Well, if Oprah wants to get in contact with me, I will go wherever I need to go to meet Oprah.
I know that's right.
That would be a really exciting day for me, let me tell you. So to get in touch with me, you can email me at heidi.katz, which is just my name, at N as in national, M as in multiple, S as in sclerosis, S as in society. So heidi.katz at nmss.org. And that email will come directly to me. Certainly can reach out to the two of you. You have my contact information. And anybody from anywhere in the country or anywhere in the world, if they see this, you know, please feel free to reach out to me. And Oprah, if you hear this, by all means, give me a call. And, you know, a lot of people don't know, but Michelle Obama's dad lived with MS. And if you've read her book, it was a very significant part of her life. And he passed away from complications from MS because it was before there were the types of treatments and services that we have today.
Right.
So if Michelle Obama wants to reach me, I would love to talk to her. But absolutely, that would be quite a day for me. But anybody, anywhere that has questions, wants to connect, has concerns, needs resources, feels a little bit lost or feels a lot strong, feel free to reach out, please.
All right. And remember, the National MS Society's website is nationalmssociety.org.
Correct.
Once again, that's nationalmssociety.org. And Heidi's contact information and the National MS Society's contact information is in the description. So make sure you go down and access that information, access these resources. That's the reason why we're doing these interviews, so people can access these resources. And we just hope you are enjoying and being able to use the information. So once again, Ms. Heidi Katz, thank you for joining us here on Mind Your Body and Soul.
Thank you for all that you do. Thank you for inviting me here and for helping to, you know, get some awareness out there. It's very, very important. The work that you do is very, very important, and you are very appreciated.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. So I am Joseph Ward. He is Matthias Sweet. And remember, this is Mind Your Body and Soul. And Mind Your Body and Soul is an educational podcast that focuses on all things health related to help our listeners learn more about various health topics and information they may or may not have access to. We seek to inform, empower, uplift, and mobilize our listeners to become the healthiest versions of themselves. So www.nmcpodcast.com, neighborhoodmedicalcenter.org. Remember, we're also on Anchor, Breaker, Radio Public, Pocket Cast, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and of course, right here on YouTube. Subscribe and hit that like button. Go ahead and hit that like button now. You know you want to hit that like button, and we will see you next time.